My name is Zachary McNaughton, and I am not a professional angler. I've been fishing for over 20 years, and the one thing that these years have taught me most is that I have a lot to learn. So let's meet some of Vermont's true master anglers, and together we'll discover some fishing techniques and explore the many species that this great state has to offer.
Well, we were out looking for bedding bass. I guess we found mostly smallmouth, which are, this time of year, they're always good for picking the beds, you know, mid-May, the end of May.
Oh, nope, she's back.
Oh, she's coming. Oh, she's getting.
Oh, lost her.
Sometimes they're easy to catch and sometimes they're not as easy to catch. It's really all about being persistent about locating them. Sometimes you have to stay a little farther away and sometimes you can be pretty close to them. They're basically just protecting their beds. We go in there and play with them a little bit and we release them right after that. So it's all about having a little bit of fun. It's probably a good thing to take your kids out and show them what it's all about a little bit. They'll stay in the boat for a lot longer if there's some action going on. Well, looking for bedding fish, I guess the smallmouth likes the water a little colder, anywhere from, I want to say maybe high 50s into, well, the water temperature probably now is almost 65 here. So we're still found them. There's different waves of spawning fish that come through. Some come earlier, some come late. And so I would say anywhere from the high 50s to maybe mid-60s, that's when the smallmouth usually spawn. Well, the beds are mostly in rocky, sandy shorelines. They probably can bed in water anywhere from a foot down to like 5, 6, 10 feet if the water's clear enough. And if the composition of the bottom is good, they'll bed in there. A bed looks like, it's like a dinner plate. It's white, more likely. If it's really sunny out and if there's no wind, you'll see this, you know, the area could be anywhere from, I want to say maybe 2 feet to like 4 or 5 feet round that you see. And if you're cruising down the shoreline with your trolling motor and you see this big white dish, you'll see right away if there's a big smallmouth sitting in there because they're a little darker than the sandy area. So you see this fish darting across and you'll notice right away if something isn't there or not. But you should really have a good pair of polarized lenses. It's amazing how much more you can see because the condition's not always perfect. Like in a day today, we started out, it was glass on the morning, so you could see better. It was, you know, fairly bright out, so you could get away with not having polarized lenses. The way it looks right now, we got a little ripple on it, a little cloud cover. It's very hard to see the bed, so but with a polarized lens, you have a better chance of seeing actually the beds. You present the lure into the bed and she gets very agitated. Sometimes she'll back up a little bit, sometimes she swims circles around it, but she never really leaves the bed. She's always there. She just sort of moves off from one side to the other. Then that fish becomes catchable. You have to just agitate a little bit more. And if the lure gets into the sweet spot where she has deposited her eggs and everything, she's there to protect that. She'll want that. She doesn't want anything in there, so she'll protect that as much as she can. And if you hit the sweet spot, more than likely you'll have the right spot in the sense that they'll get right to it. She wants it out of there. Sometimes the fish will swim away, like we noticed today a little bit, that we found a fish on the bed, and as soon as we got there, we spooked a little bit, and it started to swim bigger circles. She was not in a hurry to come back to the bed. That probably was towards the end of the spawning cycle, where she thought everything was under control. She didn't need to protect the bed as much anymore. So those type of fish, sometimes you waste your time on trying to wait for it to come back. Usually doesn't happen. They'll come back, swim through it, see what's going on, and then they'll leave again.
So this fish is only interested if I'm on the deep side of her bed.
Okay, she's fired up now.
Well, there's probably a number of techniques that work. It's mostly something that you want to keep contact with the bottom, whether you're using a tube, a little tiny swim bait. You could use a little bit of a drop shot. You basically reel it slowly into their bed, keep it moving. Sometimes they just want to sit there. They don't like it in their neighborhood, so they'll try to pick it up and move it out. I don't think they're hungry enough that they'll eat that. They'll just want it out of their bedding area. And then when you catch that, then you set the hook and you have a little fun, take a couple of pictures if they're good enough, and let them go. They're there to take the bait out of their bedding area. They like to bed either on, like I say, sand, gravel area, maybe even sometimes around timber, maybe a few little weeds. And they'll literally pick it up with their mouth and move it out. And that is the time when you set the hook on the fish, when it actually has it in its mouth, as to move it away from it. What you feel when you're catching the fish, sometimes I guess you have to almost close your eyes when you could probably get a better hookup that way. You feel when the fish actually hits your lure, when it has it in its mouth, and when it starts to move, and then you set the hook. Sometimes when you see it, the fish doing it, you see it going right at it, gets very agitated, it goes at the lure, it puts it in its mouth, but at the same breath, you think you have it, but it has already spit the lure back out. So you can be sitting there multiple times, like we did today at times, where you cast about 15 times until you finally have the timing down between you and the fish, and you finally end up catching the fish then.
There we go.
Oh, that's a good hook set. You got that one.
Oh, lost her.
The spawn is usually, it's like a cat and mouse game, really. It's like you hope that you're going to catch every fish that you see that's on the bed. Sometimes that's not like that. I've heard stories of guys, if they happen to fish a tournament, and they would sit there, and if the fish was big enough, so obviously they would sit there for an hour, hour and a half, working that one fish over until he finally got it to bite. And sometimes you don't even get it to bite. They just swim off, they're tired of you, and so it takes a long time. Sometimes it doesn't take as much time. If the fish is really ready to get that thing out and he's very agitated, it can take less than a minute to get the fish, really. The hard part is, I guess, if somebody has never done it before, is the accuracy of your cast. You have to learn how to just either have a little pitch cast, that you're hitting that little bed or that big fish, like I was telling you, that you get the lure in there. That's probably the hardest thing. And then it's just a feeling thing. I take the lure in my left hand, and then I just swing the rod a little bit. I let the lure basically swing back and forth, and I just release it at the right time, and the lure just swings out on its own. And it's nice to have a spin casting because you don't get any backlash or nothing. So that's what I like to do. I don't usually do big side casting or overhead. I don't really do that. I'm finding more accurate if I just do a little pitch to the side like that.
There you go.
If you get out this year to target bass while they're on the beds, I just want to mention a couple things. Bass are extremely vulnerable when they're on beds, and there's a reason why bass season is closed almost everywhere in the state during the time that they are on beds. Release your fish as quickly as possible and as close to the point where you caught them so that they can get back to their beds quickly. The bedding process is exhausting for these fish, so don't keep them out of the water very long. As soon as you detect a strike, set the hook as quickly as possible in order to avoid gut hooking these fish. This episode was actually recorded back in 2019. Since then, I've had a couple seasons to practice this technique and then apply it to my kayak. During the 2020 fishing season, I joined the Kayak Bass Fishing Vermont Challenge and had a particularly awesome spring fishing for bedding bass all around the state of Vermont. If kayak bass fishing is something that you think you'd be interested in, I highly encourage you to check out kayakbassfishing.com. We have a small group here in Vermont and we'd love to see it grow. My fishing kayak of choice is the New Canoe. This platform is extremely stable. You can stand, walk around, and do almost anything you would do in a John boat or larger boat. Plus, that high-mounted seat is extremely comfortable for long fishing trips.
Thanks for watching this episode of Vermont Master Anglers. For more content, visit our Facebook page at Vermont Master Anglers. If you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe.